Mom, run! Get out now! My son's voice cracked through the phone, sharp and panicked. At 35, I, Sophia, thought my family was my anchor, but his words hit like a gut punch. What's wrong, sweetheart? My hands shook, gripping the phone. They're planning something bad. Leave. His whisper burned, pushing me to move, feet stumbling through the crowd's laughter. If you're watching, share where you're from in the comments and hit that like button. Subscribe to hear how my son's call ripped open my family's hidden betrayal. I slid the phone away, breath catching as I weaved through faces I'd trusted. Everything okay? My mother asked, fingers brushing my wrist too tightly. Just a work call, I lied, forcing a grin while my pulse roared. Her eyes darted, lips twitching like unspoken regret. My brother's wife's glance felt loaded, quick, calculated, like I was the target. Sweetheart, tell me what you heard, I hissed into the phone, stepping aside. Dad and Uncle talking last night. They want to make you look unstable. For custody. Grandma's money, too. My stomach twisted. You're safe? Yeah, pretending sick. The line went dead, fingers trembling as I clutched keys. Flashed to the divorce 2 years back. My ex slammed the door. You're paranoid, he snapped. Always were. I stood alone, papers in hand, doubting myself for a moment. That doubt lingered now, but my son's warning shoved it aside. Need anything? My brother's wife asked, smiled too sweet, eyes probing. I shook my head. Checking messages. Lie again. She lingered, her whisper to my mother echoing secrets. My mother's silence hurt most. I reached my car, hands fumbling the lock, breath hitching. Driving off, I dialed my son. What else? Uncle's wife pushing it, said trigger you at the party. Knuckles whitened on the wheel. Months of probes flooded back, her questions about my moods, my mother's distance. Family used to mean safety, but now it screamed trap. I texted my best friend, need safety, now. Reply, my house. As I drove, chest tightened. Who was in deep? My son's call cracked the truth. I had to protect us. I sank onto my friend's couch, keys clattering to the floor. Sophia, talk, she urged, locking the door. My son called at the party, said run, they're plotting to take him and Mom's money. Her jaw dropped. Who's they? My ex, brother, his wife, maybe Mom. I rubbed my eyes, exhaustion hitting. I'm scared. I'm not strong enough for this. She squeezed her shoulder. You are. Start at the beginning. Flash to 2 months ago. My mother sat at my kitchen table, tea untouched. You're distant, she said, voice soft but probing. Your brother's wife mentioned missed appointments. I gripped my mug. Missed? I'm juggling teaching and parenting. She looked down. They think you need help. Help? My voice cracked. Or control? She stood, hesitant. Just consider it. That hesitation now screamed complicity. My son overheard them, I told my friend, voice shaking. They want to record me snapping, prove I'm unfit. That's sick. What else? Strange emails, photos of my house. Found a camera behind my bookshelf. She froze. Camera? Yeah, ripped it out last week. Call my cousin, he's a PI. She dialed. Hey, need you. Friends, families framing her. Cameras, lies. Pause. Now. The investigator arrived, boots thudding. Show me the camera. I handed over the tiny device. Found it after an email, my living room, midnight. He turned it over. Cloud linked. All trace. What's their goal? I asked. Custody for your son. Your mom's trust fund. My friend nodded. Her brother's wife, psychologist, right? Bet she's the brains. I clenched my fists. She's been pushing therapy, saying I'm stressed. Flash to 3 weeks back, Natalie, my brother's wife, cornered me at a family dinner. Teaching's intense, she said, eyes sharp. Ever feel it's too much? I pushed back. I manage. She tilted her head. Your son mentioned nightmares. He's fine, I snapped. She smiled thinly. Denial's common. Her words, clinical but cutting, lingered. Now I saw her motive, not concern, but ambition. Her failing practice, hidden debts, needed my mother's money to survive. Any proof beyond his call? The investigator asked. I nodded. Emails. One had my house's photo, no sender. He plugged in his laptop. Give me access. I forwarded the email. IP's masked, but I'll crack it. My phone buzzed. My mother. Honey, where are you? Safe. Did you know? Silence. They said you're struggling? Struggling? Or set up? She whispered. I didn't know the camera. My heart sank. She was in, but wavering. What's your ex's deal? My friend asked. Money trouble. Asking too much about my life lately. My son texted, Dad's mad I left, asking where you are. Reply, work emergency, I said. Smart kid, the investigator noted. He's my rock, I said, voice breaking. A quiet moment hit. I stared at the floor, doubting my strength. Could I outsmart them? My friend's hand on mine pulled me back. You've got this. Let's plan, the investigator said. Trace footage, emails. Confront your mom first. She's the weak link. I nodded, but fear not. Natalie's psychology skills made her dangerous, every word calculated. My mother's trust in her, in me, was her leverage. But her hesitation at dinner gave me hope. Mom's not cruel, I said. Maybe manipulated, he replied. Get her alone. I called my mother. Meet me. Park bench. No one else. I'm sorry, she said, voice cracking. I believed them. Prove it. Come. As I hung up, my friend said, Careful. Natalie's smart. She'll cover tracks. I nodded, staring at the camera in my hand. My son's warning, my mother's waver, my own doubt, they fueled me. I wasn't just a mom fighting for her kid. I was dismantling their lies, one step at a time. The investigator's laptop screen glowed in the dim room, footage rolling. Your brother's wife, entering your house, he said, pointing. Gloves on, snapping photos of documents. I leaned in, breath shallow. That's her. When? 3 weeks ago. IP leads to her office. My friend paced. Motive? Her practice is failing, debts piling from bad investments, using psychology to hide it. Thinks your mother's trust saves her. Flash to 4 weeks back, Natalie cornered me at coffee. Your mood swing, she said, eyes clinical. Therapy? I pushed my cup away. I'm fine. She leaned. Denial's her tool, she muttered, as if noting for a file. That tool now revealed her desperation, not just control, but survival, twisting family for financial escape. Emails, too, the investigator added. She coached your mom, phrases to trigger you. I dialed Valerie. Meet me. We need to talk. Honey, I'm worried, she said, voice trembling. She arrived at the park bench, hands clasped. You knew about the camera? I asked. She flinched. No, but they said you needed intervention, showed fake reports. Fake? Yes, I signed the trust changes thinking it protected you. Her eyes welled. I was wrong, blinded by fear for you. A quiet moment settled. I stared at the ground, weakness flooding. I trusted you most, Mom. How could you? She touched my hand. I thought I was helping. Now I see they used my love against us. Her arc shifted from manipulated pawn to regretful ally, forwarding emails. Use these. Stop them. More traces, the investigator said later. Your ex's phone near your house during a break-in. I confronted Lucas at a cafe. Admit it, I said, voice steady despite my shaking hands. He shifted. It was Natalie's idea. I'm drowning in rent, she said. Custody flips child support. And Alex? Better with me. I stood. You're done. He grabbed the table edge. Wait, but I walked, his plea echoing. Flash to last weekend, Lucas at drop-off. Alex mentioned your stress, he said. Need help? Alex tugged my hand. Dad, stop. That tug now strengthened me, but the memory brought a surge of doubt. Had I missed signs in my own exhaustion? Valerie called. Natalie's arguing with Travis, blaming me. Stay away, I said. I'm helping you, she insisted, voice firmer. Statement ready for your lawyer. The investigator nodded. Deleted notes recovered, her faking symptoms. I paused, reflecting in silence. Natalie's motive deepened, not greed alone, but fear of losing her facade, using mind games to mask failure. Confront Travis, my friend urged, with proof. At the bench, he approached, shoulders slumped. What do you want? Admit the plot. He rubbed his face. Natalie's pushing. Debts, her practice collapsing. I went along. Regret now? He nodded. Too late. I left, his weakness mirroring mine, but mine turned to resolve. Tension coiled as texts came. Natalie, lies won't stick. Ignore. Valerie's arc grew. She visited, hugging tight. I see my mistake. Fighting with you. Quiet reflection hit as I watched Alex sleep later. Thriller of chases faded into drama's ache. Family's core rotten, but my son's breath steady, grounding me. Julia's voice cut through the phone. Evidence, solid, footage, emails, statements. I gripped the receiver, doubt creeping. What if they twist it? I'm just one person. You're not, she said. Valerie's statement helps. A quiet pause hit. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, breathing slow. The thriller rush faded into drama's weight, my weakness exposed, but pushing me to prepare. Flash to a month ago, Valerie at my door, papers in hand. Sign these for protection, she said, eyes avoiding mine. Protection from what? Your stress. I took them. This cuts me out. She hesitated. Natalie said temporary. That hesitation now marked her arc's turn, from trusting Natalie to questioning, forwarding proofs to aid me. Meet Valerie first, Julia advised. Get her full account. At the bench, Valerie approached, hands trembling. I coached phrases to trigger you, she admitted. Natalie said it was intervention. Why believe her? Fear. I thought I'd lose you to breakdown. Her voice broke. But seeing the camera, I was wrong. She hugged me. I'll testify. Her arc deepened. Regret to resolve, love twisted but realigning. The investigator added, Natalie's notes recovered. Faking symptoms for her failing practice. Debts driving her to desperation. Natalie's motive layered. Not power alone, but survival panic. Using psych skills to manipulate family as her life unraveled. Confront Lucas, Julia said. At the cafe, Lucas sat, fidgeting. Admit the plot, I said, voice steady. He rubbed his neck. Natalie pushed. I needed money for rent. Alex? Thought better for him. I leaned. You broke us. He looked away. Regret it now. But his weakness echoed Natalie's, debt blinding him. Quiet reflection struck as I walked away, sitting alone on a curb. Thriller's chase slowed to drama's core. My doubt mirrored their flaws, but my son's face and mind steadied me. Travis next, the investigator urged, with footage. He met at the bench, slumped. Natalie dragged me in, her debts, my firm tanking. Regret? Yes, I knew it was wrong, but his complicity lingered, secondary to Natalie's drive. Julia compiled, hearing soon, Valerie's testimony key. Valerie called, ready to stand with you. Her arc solidified, misguided mother to fierce ally. Preparation built, my weakness turning to quiet strength. The hearing loomed, evidence bundled in Julia's brief. They're desperate, she said, pushing emergency custody. I sat in her office, fingers twisting a tissue. What if the judge believes them? I'm exhausted. Weakness washed over me, tears threatening. Julia touched my arm. Your strength is in the truth. Valerie's testimony seals it. Flash to 2 weeks ago, Valerie at my safe spot, eyes red. I confronted Natalie, she said. She denied, but her voice shook. What'd she say? That debts drove her. Practice failing, needed my trust to rebuild life. Valerie's arc peaked. From regret to confrontation, her love turning protective. That shake now showed Natalie's crack, motive layered in panic and self-preservation. Courtroom air thickened as we entered. Judge banged gavel. Evidence? Lucas's lawyer. Respondent erratic. Julia rose. Conspiracy. Footage. Video played. Natalie planting camera. Lucas shifted. Sweat beading. Irrelevant, his lawyer snapped. Motive central, judge ruled. Valerie testified first. I was coached to provoke her. Signed fakes thinking help. Cross? Worried? Yes, but manipulated. Natalie's debts blinded me. Her voice steady, arc complete, misguided to truth teller. Quiet moment hit as she stepped down. I squeezed her hand, our eyes meeting in shared pain. Natalie on stand. Concern only. Julia, explain camera. Welfare check? With gloves? Natalie faltered. I panicked. Practice collapsing, debts mounting. I thought control fixed it. Her admission cracked the facade. Motive raw. Fear of ruin, twisting family to survive. Thriller tension built in her tremble, drama in her broken gaze. Lucas cracked next. Her idea, he pointed at Natalie. Debt pushed me. Judge, order. But damage landed. Alex's counselor remote. Child overheard. Brave but hurt. I reflected silently, heart aching for him. The drama's core. His innocence amid betrayal. Judge recessed. Outside, Natalie approached. Misunderstood. No, I said, voice firm. You destroyed trust. She walked away, shoulders slumped. Back in, judge ruled. Petition denied. Orders issued. Bang. Lucas left, head down. Natalie glared, but silent. Quiet reflections struck in the hallway. I leaned against the wall, breathing deep. Thriller's climax faded to drama's resolve. Weakness turned strength, Valerie by my side. We did it, she whispered, her arc affirming love's redemption. The courtroom doors closed, judge's ruling echoing. Denied. Orders issued. I stood, legs weak, as Lucas left, head down, Natalie glaring silent. Valerie hugged me tight. We did it, she whispered, her arc complete. From manipulated to steadfast ally, her love realigned through truth. But weakness hit. I leaned on the wall, breath shallow. What now? Julia patted my shoulder. Rebuild. Outside, no crowds, just quiet air. Thriller's end fading to drama's raw ache. My phone buzzed. Alex. Mom? One? Yes, sweetheart. Safe? We are. His voice steadied me, but doubt lingered. Had I protected him enough? Valerie drove me home. I confronted them last night, she said. Natalie broke, admitted debts drove her, twisting us to save herself. Natalie's motive deepened. Panic from failure, not malice alone, but self-preservation warping her psych skills into weapons. Lucas texted, regret everything. Ignore. Travis called. Natalie's crumbling. Your doing, I said. Hers too. He hung up, his complicit role exposed. Valerie stayed, helping pack remnants, old photos, her hands pausing on one of us. I failed you first, she said softly, but I'll make it right. Quiet moments settled. I nodded, her regret turning to quiet action. 3 months on, new house in North Park, simple, secure. Alex's room had his drawings. We walked mornings, his hand in mine. Feels good, he said. I quit teaching for mediation work, using pain to help others. Income steady, no trust needed, just us. Lucas lost visitation, supervised only, court-ordered therapy. Trying, he messaged once. Deleted. Alex chose space. He's sorry, but I like our life. Valerie downsized, cutting ties to Travis, Natalie. She visited limited, earning trust with calls, gifts. I see my blindness, she said at lunch. Fear made me weak. Her arc fuller. From fear-driven pawn to reflective supporter, love tested and renewed. Natalie's practice shut, debts overwhelmed, license probed. Her complexity surfaced in a letter. Fear ruined me. Sorry, burned it. Travis's firm collapsed. He moved away. Regret unfixing damage. Secondary shadows. Their weaknesses mirrored mine, but I cut them clean. Quiet evenings. I reflected on Alex's sketches. Us under stars. Drama's depth outweighed thriller's rush. Betrayal's cost in lost bonds, but gain in self-reliance. Nights, staring at ceilings, I unpacked it. The calls panic, footage's shock, rulings relief. Weakness in doubt, but growth in boundaries. You're strong, Alex said, hugging. That bond, my core. Valerie's visits brought depth. I doubted myself too, she shared. Natalie's words preyed on my fear. Her arc inspired, regret to renewal. Natalie's motive haunted, desperation twisting expertise into harm, a caution. Therapy helped. Betrayal rebuilds you, counselor said. I saw it. Doubt turned vigilance, weakness to wisdom. Alex grew perceptive, his art healing us. This betrayal taught me family bonds can break under fear's weight. Trust instincts over smiles. Build boundaries, let go toxic ties for peace. Natalie's panic showed villains are human, driven by hidden collapses, but that doesn't excuse. Valerie's journey reminded love can redeem if earned. Lesson warns, spot probes early, seek allies fast. Value self-reliance, forgiveness optional. For listeners, have family secrets cracked your trust? How rebuilt? Share below. Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, comment your stories. Let's connect.
My father stood at the head of the table, holding his drink high, his face carved into that unsettling smile he always wore when something didn't quite add up. The table was filled. My mother, my younger brother Jason, his girlfriend, and a couple of extended relatives I barely knew anymore. The whole thing was thrown together last minute, allegedly to celebrate my big exit. I'd just sold my startup, a cybersecurity firm, for just over $11 million. And suddenly they remembered my name. My father cleared his throat. "To my millionaire son," he said. His voice echoed in the vaulted dining room. "May your success bring you closer to those who love you." Everyone laughed politely. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Jason gave me a thumbs up like he was part of the victory. I nodded, lifted my glass, and then, casually, reached for the wrong one. Or rather his. He wasn't paying attention. No one was. I clinked glasses with him, the switch already complete, and took a long sip.
He mirrored me.
I smiled. The evening dragged on with toasts, fake affection, and shallow conversations. I'd spent the past 6 years grinding nonstop while my family watched from a distance, asking for money every few months like it was owed to them. But tonight, they were full of warmth. Too full. My father, especially, couldn't stop smiling. That same smile, tight, smug, cold behind the eyes. Then came the first sign. He blinked hard, rubbed his forehead, tried to steady his breathing. "Everything okay, Dad?" Jason asked. He waved it off. "Just a little hot in here, isn't it?" 2 minutes later, he stood up suddenly, knocking over his chair. His glass shattered. My mother screamed. He hit the ground hard, his limbs convulsing. Forks clattered. My aunt covered her mouth. Jason jumped up, yelling for someone to call 911. I just sat there, watching. They crowded around him, chaos spilling across the room like broken wine. I looked down at the glass I drank from. Still full. Still clean. "My name is Ethan Blake, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because when your own father tries to poison you, you stop calling it family." This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't drama. I know exactly what was in that glass. See, when you grow up with people who treat love like a loan, you learn to pay attention. When you become the only person in the family with real money, real freedom, you become a target. That night, something shifted. Not in them, they've always been who they are. It shifted in me. I stopped pretending this was loyalty, or love, or blood. They toasted to my life, hoping I wouldn't finish the night. But I did. And when the EMTs carried my father out of the house, unconscious, I raised my own glass quietly. A toast. Not to him. To the beginning of the end. Because the glass was clean. But the truth? Run. Success, when you come from nothing, is supposed to feel like freedom. But for me, it felt like a collar. I didn't come from legacy. I didn't have a trust fund, or an uncle in venture capital. What I had were 18-hour days, 3 years in a one-bedroom apartment with no heat, and a laptop that froze every 5 minutes. That's how I built Cibitrix, a cybersecurity tool I started coding in coffee shops while my friends were out drinking or dating. It took 4 years before anyone noticed it. 2 more before it sold. When the acquisition finally happened, my name hit the trades. My inbox blew up. My phone didn't stop ringing. But the first people at my door? Family. My father, who once told me I should get a real job and stop playing hacker, suddenly called me his genius son. My mother cried when I handed her a check to pay off the second mortgage. Jason asked for a car. Just a used one, nothing crazy. I bought them a house in Westlake. Nothing extravagant. Just safe, quiet, stable. A thank you, I told myself. But the thank you became a transaction. The shift was quiet at first. Can you cover this month's HOA fees? Your mom's back is acting up. Think you could handle her chiropractor visits? Your brother's between jobs again. Just for now. I justified all of it. I wanted to be the good son. I'd missed birthdays, holidays, and hospital visits building my business. Maybe this was how I made it up to them. But the gratitude never lasted longer than the deposit cleared. Eventually, they stopped asking and started expecting. Every conversation ended with a price tag. Every visit was a subtle negotiation. Even my success became a punchline. My father once told someone at a barbecue, "Yeah, he's the rich one. We just work for him now." He laughed like it was a joke. It wasn't. The worst part? They made me feel guilty for resenting it. They'd say things like, "We're proud of you even if you don't visit much. You're lucky you can afford to help. Not everyone has your talents, Ethan." What they meant was, not everyone has your wallet. The deeper my bank account grew, the shallower our connection got. It wasn't love anymore.
It was balance sheets.
Credit transfers. Favor tallies. I wasn't their son. I was their ATM. One night, I overheard my father on the phone, pacing the hallway while I sat in the guest room with the door cracked open. He said, "If we keep him happy, he'll keep the money flowing. Just don't spook him." Spook me? Like I was a donor. Or worse to Mark. That was the night I stopped pretending. They didn't celebrate me because I succeeded. They celebrated because I cashed out. And now, sitting across from them at that dinner, I realized something else. They didn't want a son. They wanted an exit plan. There's a moment, right before something breaks, where everything feels too perfect. Like a calm surface hiding a whirlpool underneath. That dinner? It was too perfect. Tables set with the good plates. Candles burning low. My father already sipping wine when I walked in, which was unusual because he never drank before the food was served. He always claimed it was a waste of a good vintage. But that night, 3 glasses already poured. Mine was waiting. He looked up at me with a smile I'd seen before, not warm, not proud. Calculated. "Sit, son," he said. "Tonight's special." The days leading up to that dinner had been off. First, there was the call from my mother asking if I'd finalized the will yet. You know, just in case anything ever happens. Said she saw a documentary about how young millionaires die without planning. Then came the headaches, the fatigue, the strange taste in my protein shakes that I couldn't quite place. I chalked it up to stress until the dizziness hit me while driving. I had to pull over and sit in a gas station lot for 30 minutes before I could see straight. I went to the doctor. Nothing definitive. Just keep an eye on it. Blood pressure, maybe. Stress again. But deep down I knew. The clue came by accident. I dropped my keys behind the couch one morning. While reaching down, I spotted it, a tiny white pill, wedged in the carpet. I'm no pharmacist, but I have a friend who is. I sent her a picture. "That's a benzodiazepine," she texted back. "Strong sedative. Who's taking that?" No one in the house was supposed to be on anything like that. At least, not officially. I didn't say a word. Just kept smiling, nodding, and planning. By the time the dinner invitation came through, my instincts weren't whispering anymore. They were screaming. And then the glass. Poured ahead of time. No one else's was fresh. Just mine. My father raised it, his eyes locked on mine. "To my millionaire son," he said. He never said things like that. He was the kind of man who'd call you soft for celebrating birthdays. Suddenly, he's making toasts. That smile again. Like he already knew something I didn't. I felt my throat tighten, so I smiled back. And while they passed around bread and dipped into casual conversation, I switched our glasses. It was simple.
Easy.
They weren't watching. They never watched me closely, not the way I watched them. What happened 30 minutes later? My father's hands began to tremble. His smile faded. He coughed once, then again harder. And then he collapsed face first into the mashed potatoes. Panic broke out around the table. I stayed seated. Because, deep down, I wasn't surprised. I took the wine glass with me when I left the hospital. No one noticed. They were too busy acting shocked, rallying around my father, pretending it was just a bad reaction to blood pressure meds. The same man who mocked doctors for decades suddenly had a condition they forgot to mention. I didn't argue. I didn't even flinch. I just slipped the glass into a sealed bag and left. And 2 days later, the results from the private lab came in digitalis. A naturally occurring poison. Slows the heart. Slips past most standard talk screens. If you're lucky, it just makes you sick. If you're not, it stops the heartbeat cold. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. That's what they expected. Instead, I did the one thing they feared most. I started thinking. First, I called my lawyer, told him to pull my current will and put it under legal seal. No copies, no updates, without in-person verification from me. Next, I quietly installed surveillance in my home. Not the cheap kind. Encrypted, off-grid. Motion-detected voice triggers. I even wired the lockbox in my office with a hidden mic. Then I booked a session with a financial advisor, not to move my money, but to trace it. Every wire. Every trust. Every shared signature. Because it wasn't just the wine anymore. I wanted to know how far they'd already gone. That's when I found it. A draft copy of my will saved to my mother's shared desktop, clumsily edited. Payouts altered. Power of attorney reassigned. Even my business shares were listed under alternate beneficiaries. They weren't subtle. They were impatient. So I made one last move. I created a fake version of my will, professional, legitimate-looking, signed and notarized by an actor friend in a fake office setup I designed myself. This version? It gave everything to them. Every account. Every property. Every share. It was bait. I left it printed in my study drawer, exactly where a greedy hand might look if they thought I'd never wake up. Then I went to sleep, camera rolling, eyes closed, waiting. Because if they wanted to play games, I'd show them how I win. The night was picture perfect. My mother lit candles she hadn't touched in years. My brother wore a suit he'd never bought himself. Even my father shaved, a detail that told me more than anything else. Something was coming. They said it was a celebration dinner. For my latest acquisition. For the success they never clapped for until now. I showed up with a bottle of Chateau Margaux. Something rare. Something expensive. Something I wouldn't let them poison. My father waved it off, already lifting a full glass of red. "We already opened one," he said, smiling too wide. To my millionaire son. He passed it toward me, the glass already poured. I paused, gave him a look that made him chuckle. "You suspicious now, boy?" I laughed. "You trying to outdo me?" And while they all looked at the TV behind us, while my mother adjusted the volume, while my brother made a joke about yachts, I switched the glasses.
Clean.
Quiet. No theatrics. Just sleight of hand and muscle memory from years of ignoring danger in plain sight. I raised the glass meant for him. He raised mine. And we toasted. Dinner went on. Roast lamb. Garlic mashed potatoes. 4 smiles. The occasional when are you finally settling down, thrown in like seasoning. My father took another sip. Then another. My hand didn't shake once. 29 minutes later, just as my mother brought out the pie, he dropped his fork. "Dad," my brother said. He was sweating, pale. Then came the gasp. The shaking. The sudden silence in the room as my father gripped his chest and tipped sideways in his chair. "Call 911, my mother screamed. I leapt to my feet. "What's happening? Is it his heart?" My brother cursed, fumbling with his phone. The panic was instant. "So, was the performance. Except I wasn't panicking. I was watching. The paramedics arrived fast. Too fast for my family to hide much. They asked questions. I gave answers. They took my father, unconscious but breathing. And as they wheeled him out, my mother looked at me with glassy eyes. "Did you?" "No," I said softly. "Did you?" At the hospital, they ran toxicology.
I didn't ask.
I already knew. When the doctor said the words digitalis poisoning, everyone gasped like it was new information. I just sat there, hands folded. My name is Ethan Blake. And 30 minutes after my father tried to poison me for my money, he drank his own plan. They thought I was the naive tech kid, the one too generous for his own good. But they forgot what made me successful wasn't code. It was pattern recognition. The hospital reeked of antiseptic and denial. Machines beeped rhythmically around my father's bed. He was awake now, weak, groggy, alive. Barely. A detective stood in the corner, arms crossed, notepad tucked tight under his arm. His eyes weren't on my father. They were on me. My mother sat beside the bed, her hands shaking. Not from grief. She hadn't cried, but from calculation. Her mind was already working overtime trying to rewrite the narrative. "Food poisoning," she muttered to no one in particular. "He's had shellfish reactions before." The doctor interrupted, holding a clipboard and a scowl. It wasn't shellfish. It was digitalis. A very specific, dangerous compound. Not found in lamb. The detective nodded. That's consistent with the toxicology report. Someone spiked his drink. My brother flinched. My sister took a slow step away from the bed. I didn't move. I cleared my throat, and all eyes fell on me. "I know exactly what was in that glass," I said, calm as a courtroom judge. "Because I had it tested before he drank it." My mother's face dropped. My brother's jaw tightened. "You knew," he said, barely above a whisper. "I suspected." I confirmed. I reached into my coat pocket and handed the detective a second envelope, the one with my private lab's results, time-stamped and signed. He flipped it open, scanned it, then nodded. "Matches ours." My father groaned softly on the bed. Still too out of it to lie. Still too guilty to speak. "Why would we ever?" my mother began. I cut her off. "Because I stopped being your ATM. Because you started asking questions about my will. Because you're used to me bailing you out. And this time, I didn't." The detective glanced between us. "You said you switched the glasses?" "I did," I said. His plan ended up in his own bloodstream. The room cracked open with silence. Later that night, as the police launched their investigation, I made one final move. I called my lawyer, froze the accounts connected to my family, revoked access to the home, terminated the trusts, pulled back every thread they used to pull me close. My brother tried to call. I let it ring. My mother emailed me a paragraph of blame wrapped in denial. I forwarded it to my attorney. At 2:11 a.m., I stood in the hospital parking lot, phone in hand, watching the night settle over the city. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. They didn't just try to poison my body. They'd been poisoning my peace for years. And now, I was cutting off the supply. I didn't just take back my money. I took back my name. I left without fanfare. No farewell dinner. No note. Just closed doors, canceled access, and silence. Within 72 hours of the hospital incident, I had relocated. Different coast. Different phone. Different name on the mailbox. For the first time in years, I could hear myself think. In Larkhill, Oregon, a small creative city nestled between mountains and ambition, I started over. No headlines. No handshakes from people who only knew my bank account. Just people building things for the love of it. I began investing, not in startups looking to scale fast and cash out, but in people with purpose. An app developer who coded from his car. A ceramic artist trying to escape a violent household. A former foster youth launching a mental health podcast. I didn't want equity. I just wanted them to win. It was the first time money felt like freedom again. A few months later, I launched the Safe Start Foundation, a private nonprofit for kids raised in chaos. No red tape, No bureaucracy. Just direct support. Therapy, housing, mentorship, creative outlets. I never attached my name publicly. The spotlight didn't interest me anymore. But something else did. Truth. Late one night, I wrote out everything. The wine glass, the pills, the years of emotional debt, the betrayal wrapped in birthday candles. I posted it on a community blog for survivors of toxic families. No names. No revenge. Just raw, surgical honesty. I went to sleep with zero expectations. By morning, it had over 200,000 shares. People from every walk of life wrote back. This is my father. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for saying what I've been too scared to admit. Grief rippled across the screen, but something stronger rose with it. Liberation. I kept writing. They reached out, of course. My brother left voicemails, cold at first, then desperate. My mother sent a letter. Said I misunderstood everything. My father never contacted me. Cowards rarely do. I kept every message. Unread. You can love people. Forgive them, even. But you don't have to let them keep building their houses on your spine. One morning, I watched a girl from our foundation read her first poem aloud to a crowded room. Her voice shook, then steadied, then soared. And I realized they wanted me to be their ATM, their plan B, their soft place to land after breaking everything they touched. But I wasn't that. I never was. They wanted my empire. I built a kingdom without them. A year passed. I didn't count the days. I didn't mark the anniversary. But when I stepped off that stage at the TechBridge Innovation Conference back in my old city, the air tasted like closure. People clapped. Cameras flashed. Investors lined up. But all I could think about was a house that once smelled like Sunday roast and quiet resentment. I drove by my childhood street, not out of nostalgia, just confirmation. The house was empty. The grass was overgrown, paint chipped, windows dusty. A foreclosure notice flapped against the door in the wind. The family I once knew disbanded. My brother had moved states, chasing money he never earned. My sister had gone silent after her third failed startup, funded by guilt and GoFundMe pages. My mother, I'd heard, was living with an aunt, still blaming outside forces for our collapse. And my father? He sold the last of his vintage watches online to cover a lawyer's fee. No one hired him again, not after the quiet investigation that followed the toxicology report. No charges filed, but doors quietly closed. Legacy shattered. Standing across from the house, I felt no heat in my chest. No anger. No hate. Just clarity. They hadn't just underestimated me. They built an entire future around the belief that I'd never stop giving. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small steel flask. Not out of habit, but ritual. I raised it in a mock toast, standing under a gray sky in front of the house where it all started. Not for them. For me. They gave me a target, I whispered. I gave myself a future. Later that evening, back at the conference gala, someone clinked their glass against mine and said, "To family." I smiled politely, but inside, I toasted something else.
To peace.
To boundaries. To choosing yourself without apology. Because here's the truth. I gave them everything.
My time.
My love. My trust. My money. They answered with manipulation, betrayal, and, eventually, a poison glass. But that night, I didn't just dodge a murder attempt. I buried a legacy of abuse. That night, I raised a glass. But it wasn't to family. It was to freedom.
Not the one on the table, but the one my mother drove through my back with 10 quiet words. "We voted," she said, rising from her seat and lifting her wine glass like a queen making a toast. "And you're not family anymore." Silence fell. Then came the clinking of cutlery being set down. Then a pause. And then they clapped. Some hesitated. My cousin Marla looked uncomfortable, but she clapped anyway. My brother grinned like this was the punchline to an inside joke. My aunt laughed loudest, like she'd been waiting years for this. I looked around the table, this table I helped pay for, in a house partially bought with the savings I once handed over. just until things get better. Faces I'd fed, supported, comforted when things fell apart. My seat suddenly felt cold. I blinked once. No tears, just a strange stillness settling inside me. My mother stared at me with a smug calmness. "It's nothing personal," she added, as if that made it better. "We just think it's time you learned that being useful doesn't mean you belong." I could feel my heart pounding, not out of pain, but out of clarity. I stood up slowly, smoothing the fabric of my dress, and reached into my bag. They all watched with mild curiosity. I pulled out a thick folder, a pale beige one, crisp and heavy. I placed it gently on the center of the table, right next to the half-carved turkey. "Then I guess," I said softly, "you won't need this." My mother raised an eyebrow, reached for it with a smirk still dancing on her lips. She flipped it open, and then she screamed, a sharp, guttural sound, not of fear, but of shock and fury. It sliced through the room like broken glass. My brother stood up, alarmed. "What the hell is this?" She kept flipping through the pages, her voice climbing. This is a joke, right? This isn't legal. You can't do this." But I could, and I had. They didn't know that while they were plotting to vote me out like a bad habit, I had already written them out of the foundation they stood on. No one at the table spoke. The laughter died. Marla's fork clinked to the floor. My aunt's mouth hung open, suddenly unsure. I looked around again, this time not searching for validation, but soaking in the last glimpse of something I had finally outgrown. My name is Zara, and from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me, because some families raise daughters. Others raise replacements until the replacement walks away with everything. When I was 9, I learned how to unclog a sink, not because I wanted to, because my mother said, "You're the oldest, figure it out." When I was 11, I started babysitting my siblings after school. By 13, I was cooking dinner. By 16, I had 2 part-time jobs, one after school, one on weekends. And by 18, I was paying the electric bill while my younger brother played video games in an air-conditioned room. That was my role, not daughter, not child, caretaker, provider, ghost. They said things like, "Zara's so responsible," when it was convenient. But when things went wrong, the tone shifted. "Why didn't you remind me? Why didn't you handle it?" Zara should have known better. I was the built-in backup plan. And somewhere along the way, I stopped waiting for thank yous. Not because I didn't need them, but because I knew they'd never come. My brother, Liam, was the golden child. Always praised for doing the bare minimum. Got a standing ovation for passing his math test, while I silently pulled straight A's and brought home groceries on the same day. If I got tired, I was moody. If he got tired, he was overwhelmed. Even when I tried to speak up to say, "I'm stretched too thin," my mother would sigh and say, "You're just being dramatic. Your siblings are younger. They need you." But I needed someone too. She never saw that. To her, I wasn't someone you comforted. I was someone you relied on. Useful, dependable, replaceable if I ever stopped serving her needs. She never hugged me unless someone else was watching. Never once asked about my dreams. I was the child who did, not the child who was. And the older I got, the more invisible I became. Even when I moved out for college, on a partial scholarship I earned entirely on my own, she called me every week. Not to ask how I was, but to ask for money. Just a bit to cover groceries. "Can you send something for Liam's books? Rent's a little tight this month." And every time I gave, because I thought maybe if I gave enough, she'd finally say, "I'm proud of you." She never did. The one time I asked her, just once, if she appreciated what I'd done, she looked me in the eye and said, "You're just doing what any decent daughter would. You act like we should throw a parade." No, I didn't want a parade. I wanted a mother. Instead, I got a boss. A cold manager who audited my existence and only acknowledged me when I hit her expectations. Eventually, I stopped asking for warmth, stopped chasing applause, and buried the version of me that still believed love was something I could earn. I was the invisible daughter, but invisible doesn't mean weak. It just means they won't see you coming when you finally rise. It started with a laugh, the kind that stings more than it should. I was in the hallway during a family gathering, getting water from the kitchen when I heard my sister, Ava, talking to one of our cousins in the living room. "She's not really one of us," she said, almost playfully. I mean, Zara's like staff. Reliable. Not fun. They both laughed. I didn't move. I just stood there, back pressed to the wall, heart thudding in my chest. Not one of us. Staff. Like I was the live-in help who'd overstayed her welcome. I let the water run. Let it overflow. I needed something to drown out the sound of that truth settling in. Later that evening, I saw a photo on Instagram, my cousin's wedding. A big family event. Everyone was there. Everyone except me. There was no text. No call. Not even a forwarded invitation. I confronted Ava. Her response? A shrug. We figured you'd be busy. And you're not really close with that side of the family, right? I babysat her for 2 years, I replied. Ava blinked. Still. That's when I started looking more closely. At the group chats, one of them renamed without me. Another quietly archived. Family photos that used to be tagged with my name. Suddenly, I was cropped out or simply left untagged. Holiday plans discussed in whispers, always spur of the moment, but somehow always organized without me. One day, I walked into the room and my brother Liam was joking with my cousin Jonah. Zara's just the intern of this family, he said, chuckling. Jonah laughed harder than he should have. What does that even mean? I asked. They both looked up, surprised. A little guilty, but Liam covered it well. Come on, don't be sensitive. You know you're the one who handles everything. We're just messing around. But they weren't. I wasn't one of them. I was the help desk. I started paying attention, saving screenshots, copying messages, documenting when they asked me for things, and how they spoke about me when they thought I wasn't listening. Every favor I did became a receipt. Every insult, verbal or silent, became evidence. Not because I wanted revenge. Not yet. But because something inside me had cracked, and I needed to remember why. I stopped offering help. Stopped answering every late-night call. Stopped picking up extra groceries just because I knew what brands they liked. And I started watching. What I saw was clear. They didn't just take me for granted. They'd already decided I didn't belong. They just hadn't said it to my face yet. But when they did, when my mother stood at that Thanksgiving table and said, "We voted," I wasn't surprised. Because by then, I'd already been counting the votes myself. They thought I was just the help. Just the girl who showed up when the lights needed fixing, when the fridge was empty, when tuition deadlines loomed and Dad's car needed repairs. But what they didn't know, what they never bothered to pay attention to, was whose name was on the receipts. Mine. The mortgage? Half of it had been refinanced under my credit when Mom was denied the loan. I'd signed those papers at 24 because they said, "You're our best shot." The tuition payments for Liam? They came from my account, not once, not twice, but every semester, quietly on time. Even the lawyer they'd used last year to get Aunt May out of that messy property dispute? My retainer. My contact. They used my name like it was an access key, and I let them. I thought it made me part of something. But now I saw it for what it was, liability. So I hired a lawyer. Not for war, but for order. Her name was Trina. Sharp suit, sharper mind. She listened without flinching as I laid it all out. Every payment, every asset, every document that linked me to a family that had voted me out before they realized I'd been holding the ceiling up. Trina was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Do you want to pull out?" I looked her in the eye. "I want to take back what's mine." And so we began. The first step was protection. I bought a modest one-bedroom condo under a trust, away from the neighborhood I grew up in. Cozy, safe mine. No one knew the address but me. Next came the paper trail. Utilities for the family home? I'd been the guarantor for years. They were legally tied to me. We had them formally removed. Every account cut off or reassigned. Property tax on the house? My name was still listed as the secondary payer. I submitted documents to clear that. Effective immediately, if the taxes lapsed, I wouldn't be responsible, they would. And then came the inheritance. My grandmother left me a portion of her land in her will, a quiet plot, sold years ago by my mother behind closed doors. But the records weren't buried deep enough. Trina found them. Turns out that sale had been illegal. The proceeds had to be returned or accounted for, and we filed a claim. By the time we were done, I had a folder. A beautiful, heavy folder. Inside it was the slow unraveling of every financial string they'd ever tied to me. Legal notices, ownership transfers, waivers, proof of control, proof of release. I didn't do it out of rage. I did it out of peace. Because if they were going to erase me from the family, I'd erase my support right back. But I'd do it clean. They thought they were setting me free. What they didn't know was I'd already opened the door myself. My mother's fingers trembled as she flipped through the folder, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against paper that felt, for the first time, heavier than gold. The first document was the deed update, legal, notarized, stating I was no longer a financial cosigner on the house. The moment it landed in her name alone, so did the overdue taxes I'd been covering quietly for the past 2 years. The second page was a bank termination form. I had formally withdrawn my name from the joint emergency account. The same account she dipped into every time things were tight without asking. Third was the power of attorney reversal. Years ago, she'd tricked me into signing it during Dad's health scare. Said it's just paperwork. We need a backup. That backup just ended. Permanently. And finally, the real dagger. Proof of inheritance reversal. The proceeds from Grandma's land sale. Frozen. Reclaimed. And under legal review for compensation fraud. She went pale. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Just a gasp, low and animalistic, the kind of noise people make when they realize the game is over and they weren't even playing the right board. Then she screamed. A full-throated, no longer in control scream. Liam stood up, confused. What's going on? Aunt Denise grabbed the folder and scanned the pages, her face draining with every line she read. Is this real? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Around the table, the atmosphere changed, celebration curdling into shock. The woman they had just voted out wasn't the weak link. She was the foundation, and now the ground was crumbling. Some tried to speak. Others just stared. A few avoided my eyes completely, like looking at me might burn. I picked up my bag, took one last look at the table, the linen cloth I bought last Christmas, the silverware I donated after their wedding anniversary, the dishes I once stayed up to wash while everyone else laughed in the living room. And I smiled. Not wide. Just enough. I wish you all the best, I said quietly. No yelling. No drama. No final monologue. Just truth. A clean exit. I turned and walked out. Past the dining room. Through the hallway. Into the crisp November air. My heels clicked against the porch. Steady, unbothered. Behind me, voices collided. What do we do now? She can't do this. Is this a joke? But I didn't turn back. Because when someone shows you you're not family, the best thing you can do is let them live in the silence they tried to build around you, and see how loud it gets when you're no longer there to fill it. I stepped into my car, closed the door, and exhaled. For the first time in years, I felt light. 3 weeks later, a red notice was taped to the front door of the house I grew up in. Property under review for tax seizure. The county had sent multiple warnings, all of which had been previously redirected to me. Quietly, I'd been paying them to protect the home, even though I wasn't living there. But not anymore. Now, those unpaid dues were public. Liam called first. His voice was tight, frantic. Zara, my tuition payment didn't go through. What the hell is going on? I leaned back in my desk chair, calmly flipping through a notebook. You mean the fund I set up? The one under my name. You can't just. I didn't, I said, cutting him off. You did, when you voted me out. Click. Then Ava tried. Zara, Mom's not sleeping. She's been sick over this. You've always been the mature one. Can't you just fix it? I laughed once, quietly. I was always the one who cleaned up your messes. Now you'll learn how to live in them. The news spread quickly. A cousin DM'd me on Instagram. Is it true your mom lost the house? An aunt called to say, we never meant to hurt you. Even Uncle Hassan, who hadn't called in 5 years, sent a voice note that started with, your mother's not well, and ended with, maybe you've made your point. But I hadn't done it for a point. I'd done it for peace. And that peace meant no longer carrying guilt I didn't earn. When Mom finally called, not texted, not emailed, but actually called, I let it ring 4 times before answering. Her voice was brittle. Zara, you ruined us. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shake. I just let the words settle. Then I said, you voted. Pause. I just honored it. She didn't know what to say to that. I imagined she thought her guilt would work like it used to, as a hook to drag me back in. But I wasn't that version of me anymore. The version who said yes just to keep the peace. The version who gave everything to be seen as good. The version who mistook usefulness for love. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who understood that boundaries are not betrayal. I wasn't their savior. I wasn't their ATM. I wasn't their fallback. I was free. And freedom comes with echo, the kind of silence that rings in the ears of those who never thought they'd lose you. I stood in front of the courthouse holding the simplest piece of paper I'd ever fought for, a legal name change. No fanfare, no drama, just a quiet goodbye to the last name that had followed me like a shadow I never chose. The name that reminded me of slammed doors, of being silenced, of being needed but never loved. I signed the form, took a breath, and whispered, that chapter's closed. From that day on, I carried a name that belonged to me. Not to the family that cast me out, but to the woman I'd become. Not long after, I launched the Daughters Unseen, a nonprofit for women like me. Women who had been the strong one in families that only knew how to take. Women raised in silence, told to shrink themselves, then blamed for the cracks in everything. We offered workshops, legal guidance, storytelling circles, healing retreats. But more than that, we offered validation. Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give a woman is to look her in the eyes and say, you were never the problem. I shared my own story in an essay called The Vote That Freed Me. It went viral. Thousands of shares. Emails from strangers who said, this is my life. Messages from women who had never told a soul what they'd been through until they read my words. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible. But more importantly, I wasn't alone. I found people who didn't expect me to earn love with labor. Friends who showed up without asking for anything. Women who called me sister, not because of blood, but because we'd bled the same way. And somewhere along the way, my smile came back. Not the polite, practiced smile I wore at family dinners. Not the tired, I'm fine, smile that masked exhaustion. But a real one. Soft, quiet, mine. For the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone's permission to exist. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building, reclaiming, living. And this time, everything I built had my name on it. 1 year later, the scent of roasted vegetables and cinnamon filled my apartment, my home. The table was set with mismatched plates. Laughter echoed from the kitchen, and the living room glowed with candles instead of tension. It was Thanksgiving, but this time, no one was performing. No one was waiting for me to clean up after them. No one whispered behind my back. No one held a secret vote about whether I deserved a place at the table. These people, my friends, my chosen family, brought food, stories, warmth. We clinked glasses over shared healing and cornbread. Midway through dinner, Cam, my friend from the nonprofit, leaned over and asked gently, "Do you ever miss them?" I paused, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I finally felt free enough to say it out loud. "No," I said, "because I never had them." She nodded, no judgment in her eyes, just understanding. After everyone left, I stood alone in the hallway, barefoot, wine glass in hand, letting the quiet settle. Not the suffocating kind, but the peaceful kind, like exhaling for the first time after holding your breath for years. I looked at the frame I'd hung earlier that day. Inside, it was the first page from the folder. The deed transfer, the start of my freedom. I'd mounted it like art, not out of spite, but as a reminder of the moment I reclaimed my life. The pen I used to sign those papers now sat in a shadow box beside it. And I smiled, because now every door in this home opened with my key. Every corner held joy, not judgment. Every chair welcomed the right people, no votes needed. They thought they could vote me out. They didn't know I held the pen.